Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I see we are already live. Eike is also already here. Perfect. And Laura is also here. Perfect. So welcome, everyone, to our webinar. What is a KYC blockchain and you should use it. You have probably seen our news last week where we launched like the first KYC chain as part of an upcoming sandbox for the regulatory blockchain initiative. And we've done this with the IOTA Foundation, with walt.id, with Bloom, and with ID Now. So we are going to talk about this chain. And I'm my name is Holger Köter. I'm the co-founder of Spice5, and I welcome you to our webinar. We have two interesting guests here. We have Laura from the IOTA Foundation and Eike from the IOTA Foundation. I would quickly hand over to you for a short introduction. Laura, let's go.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Laura Kaitasi, and as Holger said, I work for the IOTA Foundation as a project manager. One of my main projects is like the European blockchain pre-commercial procurement, so more commonly known under the EBSI initiative. And yeah, I do also some regulatory topics, and that's why I'm today here.
Thank you. Eike, over to you.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Eike Haas. I'm the identity team lead in the IOTA Foundation, and I'm responsible for implementation of all things DID, self-sovereign identity, and digital identity in the broader sense. Thank you for inviting me, Holger.
Thank you very much for making the time and coming here. We have some really interesting topic today. So let's talk about hybrid chains. Let's talk about app chains. And in order to start for the viewers, so we're going to dive into what app chains are for around about 5 minutes. And then we are going to move over towards Laura and Eike to talk a bit about the KYC project, to talk a bit about the regulatory aspects, but also how KYC and DID can be used to be just like more compliant in the future with the upcoming crypto regulations, which are going to affect us all. When you're running a business in Web3 or running some sort of tokenization model, the regulatory aspects, they became a lot clearer over the last 2 years. You've probably then also seen it, and we're excited to shine a bit light on this today, what you can expect and also what you should be careful of. So let's dive right in. Yeah. Here we go. So we already had the panel introduction. Very good. Great. So what are hybrid blockchains? In general, you can already see it here. This is a very nice graphic by Covalent. A hybrid chain is essentially a blockchain which is interoperable with other blockchains as well, and which can exchange different assets with other chains as well, which make it very interoperable. It's a chain which is also built for a very particular application. You can also call it an app chain or a hybrid chain. The terms are sometimes a bit mixed because an app chain essentially by definition is that you have one app on the chain, but as soon as you have more apps on the chain, you could already talk about a multi-chain environment or a hybrid chain environment. And now the new thing is that with the hybrid chains, we have full privacy to do tokenization of assets, for example, in different use cases, or we can use it for gaming as an underlying layer. So we have the full throughput of this layer 2 chain, but we can also have the security models of other underlying chains so that we can exchange those assets, and those assets are, of course, then securely transferred to other ecosystems where they can also then be used. We see hybrid chains as a great feature for interoperability. We just had this already because you have a lot of efficiency, especially in gaming. It's optimized for scaling. So you can, when your traffic on the layer 1, so on the underlying blockchain, is starting to become more crowded, you could spin up your own blockchain, and then you can start to interact. And it's like the best of both worlds between the public blockchain and the private blockchain because a hybrid chain is interoperable with those assets, what we just had, but at the same time, it's completely private so that nobody has any insights into what assets are there and who has tokenized what. The advantages are clear, so we can easily scale through hybrid chains. We're already seeing this on Ethereum with different layer 2 chains. And this is also how we position SPICE. So to envision an age where we are going to have hundreds of different ecosystems, hundreds of different chains. We all know that the blockchain adoption is coming with like rapid steps. Everybody is now building towards those actual use cases, and we are moving from a protocol level towards actual implementation. So the protocols are being abstracted, business cases are being formed around it. We have startups which are starting to cater towards them, and then in return create like turnkey ready solutions for organizations. We have seen the scaling over the past 5 years already on Ethereum. Also on Ethereum, we have like probably like a new layer 2 every week now, which is launching. And we also see many other protocols pivoting towards a hybrid chain direction, simply because it's very efficient. So the advantages are quite clear. Now we're a lot more efficient. We have the privacy. There are some drawbacks. It depends a bit like on the chain implementation. If you're on Avalanche or on IOTA, for example, so some chains are doing it a bit different. But in general, you have like fewer validators, so you can easily build like consortium chains, which are also interoperable. And of course, if you have like fewer validators, this might come along with a decreased security. This is something we are seeing in Ethereum at the moment already. We have like hundreds of chains, and where Eigenlayer, for example, it's a protocol which is then taking this into account. To have like an increased security model again by offering dedicated validators. And of course, there might be like a higher management complexity and overhead. But for this, you then also have your own ecosystem with your own token. You can set the gas fee to 0. So there are a lot of benefits in operating your own ecosystem, maybe even tying a KYC to your ecosystem to be regulatory compliant, that only KYC persons can actually trade in your own chain. And then you can start to connect this chain, trade financial assets, but also start to trade to exchange gaming assets, for example, or any other tokenized values. Good examples for app chains are, for example, IOTA and Shimmer. Cosmos is very much pivoting towards an interoperability between different layer 2 systems. The Avalanche subnets are around for 1.5, 2 years. So those are also very similar, like the Polkadot parachains, which has also been around for quite some time. They're now being reworked. But all of those initiatives, you can see it on the Starknet app chains, the Casper Labs app chains, all the major protocols, they're now going towards this direction to see how can we build private ecosystems where we have a privacy, where we can use the benefits of blockchain, but where we are also fully interoperable. Yeah, and then to these hybrid chains, we can then add enterprise data, we can add cloud data, we can add different management services, and with this, like the complexity rapidly decreases, and this makes it very easy for every protocol, for every dev to even launch on their own chain. And yeah, let's talk a bit about our KYC chain project. This is very novel. We have in the consortium IOTA, ID now, walt.id, just seeing here, move me up a bit here. And Bloom. And the novelty in this chain is that all participants in this chain are KYC'd. And what is so special then about this and what we are going to do on a technical level is something what Eike is going to explain us. But first, let's watch a short summary about this project.
In the world of Web3, a challenge has emerged, a need for robust user authentication without compromising privacy. New global rules on anti-money laundering call for tighter checks on Web3 users. Self-hosted wallets are an essential part of Web3 and need to enable easy user identification. To address this challenge, we've pioneered a cutting-edge KYC solution that authenticates users in Web3 environments, respecting user autonomy and privacy. ID Now conducts a secure remote identification process, which is fully compliant with existing rules for electronic identification. The identification process is then tokenized by walt.id, ensuring confidence in the authentication process. The resulting token is stored in the user's Bloom wallet, bound to their authenticated address, and can be used for all sorts of on-chain processes like DeFi, for example, without revealing personal information. Welcome to the future of Web3, where privacy, security, and compliance come together seamlessly.
Classic muted. So this is quite exciting. We have now the first KYC chain where we have authenticated participants on this chain to use the automation of DeFi in a regulatory compliant environment. And this is really powerful if you envision all the tokenization aspects when we are starting to tokenize bonds, for example, as well, and of course, or real estate, and those need to be traded in KYC compliant hybrid chains. But let's now open the panel and let's bring in Laura and Heike. Let's see, there's still like a... let me see.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Hello. Hi, Heike. Hi, Laura. Thank you very much. All right. 4 questions to you, Heike.
Yes.
Decentralized identity management. How does IOTA's approach to decentralized identity management differ from other blockchain solutions, and what are the unique advantages?
Yes.
Or challenges?
Good question, and I think that is also something that we are quite proud of. We have DID implementations, which is a well-recognized interoperable standard, and we follow that standard. So we are part of this interoperability story, but we unlock additional functionality on layer 1 using our identity solution, because the central entities on the ledger where we put DIDs into are also the entities that own tokens, mint NFTs, or create native assets. So you have a strong link between on-chain interaction, and I'm talking strictly L1 here, right? On-chain L1 interactions and the digital identities, and that allows you to go basically from on-chain guarantees like immutability and clear origin, and represent those in an off-chain environment through DID, or take off-chain information like links to websites, to domains, and reflect them on-chain in those entities through DID. So that is a pretty unique property of a IOTA protocol, which you don't have to use, right? You can use it fully facing off-chain interactions using DID, SSI, but you can unlock those additional layer 1 on-chain benefits as well.
And I think it's quite interesting that the protocol is also directly working like on the layer 1, because we do not have this in many other crypto projects.
Yes, usually DIDs, and totally understandable, are kind of a afterthought, right? You use something where you can represent some stored data, some metadata, and put a DID into it and claim that's the DID anchor, which works for the off-chain interactions. But as you said, Holger, through the design of a layer 1, we are lodged very much in the center of the ledger with the DIDs through the alias output, specifically in Stardust.
Yeah, and that also makes it the most powerful, of course.
Yeah.
Great. Then let's talk about jurisdictions. Like, can you provide an insight how the technology adopts to different jurisdictions and their respective KYC requirements? So we have now one requirement in the project, but maybe there are also other requirements or other ways how a KYC could be done.
Yes, that's a very interesting question. And besides at least some principles of SSI being taken more seriously in regulations in certain jurisdictions. We see the IDAS regulation in the EU coming up that at least uses partial parts of the SSI stack, right? It's not the full SSI stack. It won't be anchored in fully permissionless decentralized ledgers, most likely, right? But it at least uses credentials, which is already pretty powerful. And there's a potential for interoperability between strong AIDAS private ledgers and maybe some permissionless ledgers. But regulation spans further than that. If we talk about what Laura's more familiar with, financial regulations, AML, MiCA, and so on, they also consider crypto assets to be a target for regulation. And we have a solution for layer 1, or at least a pretty good shot at a solution for layer 1. But layer 2, in our case, EVM style addresses would be outside of the scope of our layer 1 solution. And this is where this project that we're talking about gets really interesting. So we don't really implement certain jurisdictions, or they're enforced, how do you call it, limitations, so to say, but we provide the tool set to hopefully adapt to those quite easily, right? And to make your applications compliant by being interoperable, following well-established standards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is so important. So let's talk about the KYC chain mechanics. Like, can you please explain how
Yes.
it works now on our chain? Like, or are there any other ways? You already like touch pointed
Yes.
about it, but now what is so special about this project and about this chain?
Yes. We touched about that briefly before, right? That we have a pretty complete layer 1 solution, but we want to also have solutions for scriptable environments. In our case, EVM style L2s. There will be canonical chains, right? There are already with the Shimmer EVM, and there will be the IOTA EVM. And the solution that we propose will work on those in a very similar way, right? But it's a public permissionless chain, and nobody can enforce any authentication in there. If we have a dedicated chain, we are able to control it more strictly, right? That comes at the cost potentially of permissionlessness, right? However, you design those parameters, and that's the beauty of the app chain or hybrid chain concept, right? There's a space for every combination of settings and requirements, if that makes sense, right? You cannot have it very tightly controlled, or you can have it very open, right? And with this KYC chain, we basically propose a environment where participants, addresses to be more technical, are authenticated, and applications deployed on this specific chain can have very high certainty that the addresses that they interact with have been KYC'd. For good measure, they should definitely check in the application code as well that the authentication has been taken place and it's still relevant and hasn't been revoked and so on. But we basically create a environment where we have higher assurances than you might have on a completely permissionless chain.
Yeah. Yeah. This makes sense, and I think like Laura can also follow up a bit on this regarding the requirements for regulatory issues. So let's talk about future developments in identity verification. Like, what is the next big thing, Eike?
Yeah.
And how can we integrate this?
So I think more varied authentication is one big topic, right? Where you might have a process where the outcome confirms that you are a human, proof of humanity, right? But you might also want additional attributes, like is a citizen of a certain jurisdiction, maybe an EU citizen, right? It might be in the direction of accrediting certified investors and so on, so that you have multiple markers that allow you access to certain products without revealing your whole CV or your bank records or anything like that, right? Still being privacy preserving. And I think a big topic that has been a hot topic for a hot minute now is zero knowledge technology, which allows you to process that kind of I don't want to say information, but proofs is probably more accurate, on-chain, also in smart contract environments, which is very exciting. And there's overlap between those things, right? We right now have a tokenized version where you consider the existence of a token to be the proof for an authentication process that has been taken place to some outcome, right? EU citizen or something like that. But you can encode more information or more detailed information in zero knowledge proofs, and that will be a very interesting area of research for us in the future to see how we can make those on-chain proofs available for evaluation for DApps and fully autonomous systems.
Yeah, this is really interesting. Great. Then thank you very much, Eike.
Sure.
Laura, over to you. Let's talk about regulatory framework adoption. So what do we need in order for or comply with in the coming future? Like what is happening at the moment in the regulatory space?
All right. Yeah, very happy to take that question. So as Eike already indicated, there is the AMLR, so the anti-money laundering regulation and the transfer for funds regulation, which is getting or will be very important in the future, which actually extends any anti-money laundering obligation to crypto asset service providers, which the regulation aims at the end to prevent money laundering and terrorist financing in digital assets space. And as a result, the goal is, of course, to maintain market integrity and market and consumer protection. So in assets, crypto asset service providers under AMLR are responsible for implementing AMLR measures, conducting user identification, and also in some cases monitoring transactions for suspicious activities, so specific patterns on the protocol. And that said, that sums is quite well up. Just to give some orientation, for example, if the transfer exceeds 1,000 from a hosted wallet, for example, a hosted address, the CASP or the crypto asset service provider needs to take risk-based measures to assess whether address is owned by the originator or beneficiary. So that to give it kind of an overview what is awaiting for us. Of course, now we see the challenge is here if you transfer specific regulation from traditional finance or traditional banking to a more decentralized world. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, but more to that later maybe. Yeah, so that's just to give a quick overview.
Can you say something maybe in addition about the time frame? So when is this planned?
Yes, for sure. So by the 30th of December 2024, the Commission, like generally for for DeFi more and where it plays a more crucial role for DeFi and NFTs, the Commission plans to give a first proposal of it, but when it comes to like anti-money laundering and so forth, the aim is also to basically provide something by this year.
Yeah, wow, it's going with rapid steps now. Thank you. So let's talk about the IOTA Foundation and the regulatory work. How does it look like? What aspects are you tackling, or why is this even important to do?
Okay, so first of all, I would always distribute this in 3 pillars. So there is first activities that we do are consultation or like contributing to consultation papers where we actually try to get in dialogue with regulators or express opinions, close knowledge gaps, because we all know there are a lot of misconceptions. And as I said, transferring some regulation just simply to like the crypto world is always a bit difficult. So there the aim is to really get into dialogue with 3 different pillars, as I said. The first one being, as I said, the more consultation part. Then the next one are projects. So really we had in the past grants, and in that it's really nice because you get like feedback loops from the European Commission, for example, where you can really exchange and see how to best develop that product, but also what regulatory things are important to keep in mind. So you get also feedback there, which is quite nice, but you can also express some unrealistic things or things that don't fit. And then the last part is like really one of my favorite topics, which are sandboxes. I think this is the perfect space to actually apply to them, or at least our aim is to apply to sandboxes and to really be involved them, create sandboxes so that we have this dialogue with regulators and really create something. And there lies the importance of all these three pillars. Create a landscape, a regulatory landscape, which protects the consumer on the one hand, but on the other hand creates a landscape that is favorable still for innovation and doesn't restrict innovation. So that's all from my side for this question.
Yeah. But this is like a thin red line to walk, no? It's like, so how can we test out these new models in those new regulatory, maybe more open environments, and then see what aspects can we apply as part of the next legislation. Then let's talk about benefits. Like, how does the collaboration with platforms like Spice5, when we work together in the project, like how does this benefit regulatory clarity?
So of course, like one of the things that I think are very interesting, and this is what you mentioned at the beginning, Holger, is this hybrid approach, and this is where we're working at with Spice5, and where we actually, there comes the regulatory part into play, where we actually also aim to apply for a specific EBSI sandbox. So we still are applying for it, but that would be basically the aim to get to take this solution and go together with Spice5 into dialogue with different regulators, specifically for Spice5, providing basically this a hybrid approach. Spice5 is basically the provider of the infrastructure, so to say. It leverages everything that we actually are going to build on. So that's basically all that I would say. I don't know how much time I have because I'm trying to keep myself going.
I think we're starting to approach the end of the webinar. Let's do like one more question. Like, what are now the biggest challenges? What you foresee? We have seen a lot of crypto regulation in the past 2 years. So, how do you see what's going to come in the future?
So as for the challenges, as I mentioned beforehand, I think the main challenge is really to get in the right dialogue and actually ensure that this transition to a more decentralized world of the regulation to a more decentralized world for regulations that are made for more centralized worlds, that this actually will be done on a good way. For example, it's very difficult for like decentralized finance for a platform to actually for a protocol to do all this KYC in a centralized version. So there we would need an approach that is more actually applicable to a decentralized world, and which doesn't require that everything is done by the protocol, but where we really have this app chains, this hybrid approaches. So there to get more into dialogue with the regulators to actually see how this can be done differently. Of course, and there are also security and privacy concerns. So where does privacy end and begin? Because sometimes if we talk about, for example, detecting suspicious behavior on the protocol and we try to track patterns, we always need to face the question of how much can we actually track on the protocol so that it doesn't really hinder privacy. These kind of things are points where I see we really need to collaborate a lot, to go into conversation a lot, and if we do so, I think there we will have a better future, but I think it's still a long way to go.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Laura. So this concludes the end of our webinar. We are going to add a Q&A session, so you can already start to write your questions into the chat. I want to thank you already, everyone, especially Laura and Eike for taking the time. If you want more information, you can find it directly on spice5.com/blog, or you can write to Holger at spice5.com or hello@spice5.com. And we would be happy to get in touch with you to set up your own app chain, to help you test out some things, to provide you with maybe even like several chains, not really, or KYC chains, so to really dive into this new regulatory world and be fully compliant. So again, thank you. And now let's start maybe with a question. Let's see, so yeah, you are muted. Thank you. Great. Review of GDPR will be key for DID. No, that is coming this year too, from Mariana.
True.
Great, but I see there are no further details questions. So then I would say thank you very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And then enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Holger.
Goodbye.
Bye.